past custom doing it for years.
All right, we've got the microphone on as well.
Yeah, that's very fun. All it takes. Oh, yeah, right. So it's, the repetitive is crazy. But then it's just like, all we do is go, we're about ready to start. Okay. And there, new stuff today.
Ready to record?
I'm ready to go. Are you ready?
Ready.
Okay. Good evening. The January 25th, 2024 Whatcom County Planning Commission meeting is called to order. I'll call the roll. Let me know if you're here. Melvin Barton, myself. Dominic. Here. Daniel Dahlquist.
Yes.
Joel Desmani.
Here.
Jim Hansen. Jim Hansen. Stephen Jackson. Stephen Jackson. Julie Jefferson. Julie Jefferson. Frank James. Here. Scott Van Dalen. Here. Okay. Please join me in the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, now's the time for department update. Assistant Planning Director. Steve Robert. Will you go ahead with the
Yeah,
department update?
so maybe I'll start off by talking about our next meeting. Our next meeting is our annual business meeting. And so we'll be electing chair, vice chair, reviewing our business rules. We'll be reviewing the docket, a little bit like we did our last meeting. We'll go into a little more detail in that. Then this first half of the year, we'll be starting to look at some of the comp plan stuff. The first comp plan stuff we're gonna look at the public participation plan for the comp plan. We'll be looking at the land capacity methodology, and we'll also be talking about population employment projections. So those will be the first things we talk about. Those will be things we talk about sometime this first part of the year, before we start digging into more detail on some of the revisions that we're probably likely going to be talking about. We also have a few other things that we'll probably be bringing to you the first part of this year. We'll be bringing the capital improvement plan, the CIP, back for a conversation with some additions and some modifications to that. And then maybe towards the end of the meeting, maybe we can talk about other things we potentially have scheduled, how that schedule might play out as far as the next couple of meetings. And then big projects we have going on. You probably all heard about ABC Recycling, Ranch 40 Mine. I also want to let you know that we have hired a natural resource manager. We've been down our natural resource manager for several months. And we have a new natural resource manager starting in mid-February. So that's coming right up. So we're excited about that. And with that, I'll take any questions for it.
I just heard from someone who said that they can't get into the meeting, by the way.
Can you check the link on the
for attendees. They have to sign up. Let me see if I can. I'll find it.
Okay, thank you, Tool, we're working on it.
So we'll hold just a moment here.
I think from the general public.
Okay. Jim Henson just told me. Oh. You can, continue, if it's a general public, they'll be able to be up in this month.
Okay. So it's a time right now, it's open session for public comment. Nylene will leave that, but she's got to get
Oh, I
back
will.
up here.
Oh, maybe we'll.
Okay, Becky Box will go ahead and take care of that. Thank you, Becky.
Welcome to the meeting. This meeting is being broadcast live. The audio is being recorded and will be posted to the county website. As noted on our website, members of the public may watch the meeting or join online or by phone. During the open public comment session, speakers may not speak to the items that are scheduled on the agenda for a public hearing tonight, which is the issue on propane in the ag zone. That will come later. If you would like to provide public comment at this time, we will take your comments from those in the room first. Please come up to the podium and print your full name on the sign-up sheet. If you are participating remotely and would like to speak, virtually raise your hand and we will get to you shortly. If using the internet, press the hand icon to raise your hand. If calling in by phone, press *9 to raise your hand. Go ahead and state your name.
Dave Widener.
You have a timer? I do, I'm not sure why it's in trouble. There it is.
That's my timer.
Yeah, thank you, Dave.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, since there is a 3-minute limit, I'll start with the last step first. Reviewing the contract with SCJ Alliance. As a person from the public that's not familiar with everything you guys talked about, concerned about task 18 on page 28, where it says their job is to avoid unintended incentives to build outside of UGAs. To me, for a comprehensive plan that's going to go for the next 20 years, to rely on something that was done in 2012 doesn't seem to be getting $1 million worth. Task number 3, page 18, it says 3.1, they will review the draft Whatcom County land capacity analysis. My question is, where is that analysis? If you guys have got something that was developed in February of this year or last year, excuse me, whenever it was, it said there's already one available. They're going to be looking at it, and I would like to see how that applies to the property that I'm concerned about north of Sunset. There's a UGA right there. I drive a lot delivering parcels for the Postal Service, and we have a lot of 5-acre rural properties that are wooded, second growth. This property over here is not that. It's flat, it's level. Right across the street, there's 8 1-acre lots with houses on it that were developed prior to 2011. What do I got left?
Minute 15,
15 seconds?
1 minute 15.
Okay. The 2 policies that affect us the most are 2MM1 and 2MM2. And 2MM2 said it should allow infill development with lot sizes consistent with those of surrounding lots. The surrounding lots around ours is 1-acre lots with a house on it. Ours is restricted are 5 to 1 house with an accessory dwelling unit. I recognize that one of the council members told me that when you guys do this, you have to draw a line in somebody's backyard or their front yard, and I recognize that. I think that this comprehensive plan that's developing something for the next 20 years, we should be able to not avoid unintended incentives because we're gonna have a huge amount of population and traffic growth. The state's determined that freeway interchange is gonna have a lot more traffic. They have to go somewhere and they have to do something. So that's my follow comment for this with it. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone else in the room wish to speak? Is there anyone attending remotely wishing to speak? No? They can't put their hand up. So they have to all out. Phone number ending in 468. Did you wish to speak? Seeing none, I'll close this.
Okay. Thank you, Becky.
Oh.
Hi there.
Oh,
I am.
Did you,
Oh,
did you,
hi. Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hey, my name is Ellie Heron, and I was asked by several of your committee members to talk about the agricultural change in code. Is this an appropriate time to address that?
No, it's not. We will have the public hearing for that shortly.
All right. Okay, I'll just stand by.
Thank you.
did you all notice that I'm here? This is Jim.
I had not. Thank you, Jim. Okay, so time now for commissioner comments. Any commissioner comments? Being none, let's move on to approval of okay. Commissioner Deshmani, go ahead.
Oh, just Happy New Year to everyone. Good to see Frank as our new planning commission member, and looking forward to another fun-filled meeting.
Right, so let's move on to approval of minutes.
I can make a motion, we accept the minutes.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a second. Are there any?
I abstained since from voting because I wasn't there, right?
Thank you.
You're smarter than I am.
So, are there any additions or corrections? Any additions or corrections? Okay, seeing no additions or corrections, Becky, would you call the roll, please?
Dahlquist,
Yes.
Deshmani,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Hanson. James abstain, Masseri,
Yes.
Van Dalen,
Yes.
Barton,
Yes.
and that passes.
Hey. Yeah, as Commissioner Desmani, welcome Frank. Frank James is our newest planning commissioner meeting and takes the seat that Kimberly Lund has. Welcome, Frank.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
Okay, so now it is time for our main topic for the evening, the proposed amendments to Whatcom County Code. So, right, go ahead and make the presentation. I believe that's going to be Lucas Clark and long-term planner with Whatcom County.
Good morning, commissioners. Can I share my screen?
Sure can.
Here you go, Lucas.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Give me 1 second. Good morning. Can you all see the correct
Yes.
screen there? Yep. Good evening, Planning Commission. I'm Lucas Clark, Long Range Planner with Whatcom Planning and Development Services. I have a short presentation for you today about County Council proposed amendment. A little bit of background: on October 10th, 2023, Council amended the Comp Plan and Zoning Code docket to include a review of allowing propane sales, reload, storage, and distribution facilities as a conditional use in the Ag Zone. The Council tasked Planning and Development Services with reviewing the suggested code and providing a recommendation to the Council. On December 13th, 2023, the proposed amendment was presented to the Agricultural Advisory Committee, which voted to forward the proposal to the Planning Commission.
And Lucas, can you hold just a moment?
Sure.
Planning Commissioner Desmani has a question for you.
I guess the question is, would you like questions? Is it a short enough presentation that we should just save our questions to the end, or would you like us to ask them during the presentation?
It's pretty short. I've got 4 more slides.
Okay, I'll wait then.
Okay. On December 13th, the proposed amendment was presented to the Agricultural Advisory Committee, which voted to forward the proposal to the Planning Commission. On this slide is the proposed code that will allow propane sales and distribution through a conditional use permit. We'll end on this slide and you can review it in more detail then if you would like. The proposed code was also included in your packet. The key takeaway is that the intention is to protect lands in active agricultural use and only allow propane distribution on sites that have a compatible pre-existing infrastructure through the conditional use permitting. Conditional use permits are a rigorous process for any applicant. Any proposal for a conditional use permit for propane distribution will have to fit the 9 conditional use criteria, the 8 criteria in the proposed code, and the permit application will go through public notice, a public hearing, and go before the hearing examiner before they ultimately approve or deny it. The proposed amendment is consistent with Whatcom County Comprehensive Plans, goals, and policies. It discourages the conversion of productive agricultural land. The intention through the permitting process is to confine propane sales and distribution to the pre-existing infrastructure and impervious surfaces. These policies shown on the screen are the ones that the proposed amendment is in compliance with. Here's the draft code again. In light of the letter that was emailed out to the Planning Commission a few hours ago, PDS is not asking for any action from the Planning Commission tonight. We would like some time to review the letter. And that's the end.
Commissioner Desmani, go ahead.
So first, let's talk about the background of this effort. So when did the County Council first act on pursuing this code change and adding it to the docket?
Was October 10th, right?
It could have, I don't remember the exact date.
What month?
It was a pre-app meeting on August 1, 2023.
The council added it to the docket at October 10th, 2023.
So I'm curious about that because it's a pretty quick turnaround to get something to the docket and then on the Planning Commission agenda. What's the urgency around this particular project and this change?
I think, Commissioner Desmani, if I may, I think it really has to do with that we had cleared our docket, and we talked a little bit about that at our last Planning Commission meeting. Our docket was, for the most part, cleared.
But it's not typical for something to come up like and be docketed and to be already reviewed at the Ag Advisory Board and then onto the Planning Commission, right? That's pretty fast, right? I mean, it's good to see government moving fast, but it is unusual, correct?
Yes.
Okay. The title of the presentation is propane. What is it? Go to the first slide again. Propane distribution in ag. I'm wondering, Is there anything relevant to talk about from the history of propane distribution and terminaling in Whatcom? I have a few questions about that. But what terminals currently exist for propane distribution in Whatcom County? Where there's storage, offloading and reloading. Where does that happen?
I didn't map out the specific sites. I'm not sure that I can answer that question.
But we all know about AltaGas, right? Is there any other?
I don't believe AltaGas does distribution, do they?
Are we allowed to speak? Sir?
Probably wait till
I'm gonna, will you share your name? I'm gonna recognize the gentleman here in the audience that I believe may have an answer for that.
Denver Vanderyacht with Vanderyacht Propane, just as a represent in this, I may have an answer to clarify, Commissioner.
Okay.
Thank you.
Then would you go ahead and answer Commissioner Desmani's?
Yeah, so I see specifically asking, distribution, AltaGas is a primary wholesaler of propane, so they're out of BP. This would kind of focus more on the residential and more local deliveries to the local ag communities.
Okay.
So not the whole, this ain't BP, I'm not focusing on a whole full-fledged terminal BP, more isolated to more local ag, primarily ag served business.
Okay. Thank you.
Supporting the ag community.
I guess what I'm curious about in the current distribution chain, the folks that like Vanderyacht who distribute to the ag end users, where do you currently get your propane?
The local refineries.
So you don't buy from AltaGas, you buy from the refineries directly?
We have contracts through various wholesalers, AltaGas, Petrogas, Anacortes, haul some in via rail as well on the rail terminals. So rely heavily from our local refineries and our neighbors up north.
Yeah, I appreciate you answering the questions. Please don't, I don't want poke in anything that's proprietary out of respect for your business. I was into fuel distribution, but I'm just trying to understand a little bit more about this. So I want to make sure I respect your, things that are proprietary. Yeah, and regarding that, so what this would do is just open up more options for you to bring in bulk product. Is that what this proposal is basically doing?
To isolate and reserve propane to support and supplement our ag customers. And
sorry, keep going.
Yeah, and to be a central location to serve all of our ag customers in Whatcom County. I mean, between Northwest and Vanderyacht Propane, our gallons are upwards of 250,000 gallons just for our ag customers.
So, in terms of that quantity, has there actually been situations where you haven't been able to get supply from the Cherry Point area, resources, and you just want to make sure you have availability when you do?
Correct. There have been instances where BP Cherry Point does not have product, Canada hasn't had product, and we've had to directly rely on rail imports from the Mideast and West to rely heavily on rail car gas. So it's a big issue in our business to where we directly rely on on-site storage for propane.
And so yeah, I mean, you don't have a rail siding you can use, and so basically, it creates a real bind for where do you land those rail cars and how do you transload those rail cars?
Correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hanson.
Thanks. It takes a minute to unmute. I'm using an unfamiliar tablet. Um, First of all, I was a little confused about the presentation. It indicated something to the effect that staff has to do more work on this proposal before we move it forward. Is that correct?
So,
I think Lucas made that statement. Lucas, can you answer that?
well, I think what Lucas was referring to is we received, Commissioner Hanson, I'm not sure you saw the letter that we received. You should have gotten your email this afternoon.
Yeah.
Time around 4.
Yes, I did.
So we received
Yes,
the
I did.
letter, we're just, the commission can certainly take an action tonight if they so choose. We saw the letter and wanted to take a little time to digest it and provide some feedback to the commission.
I see. So we're not going to make a decision tonight, but are we having a public hearing tonight?
Yes, that is the plan.
So, okay, well, it seems a little out of order to have a public hearing on an ordinance that isn't finalized, but I guess I'll let you all figure that out. Couple comments I have on this is that, one, we're doing a comp plan update, and it seems out of order to do changes at this late date. I'd rather see this considered within the overall context of our comp plan revisions. That's one bias I have. It seems a little spotty to start at this late date, changing some sections in any way. And I also noted that Mr. Vanderyacht used the word residential as far as some of the customers. And a concern I have is that although this particular facility might not displace agricultural use because of its specific location, the greater availability of propane in this area might tend to support uses that would displace agriculture. So that's another concern I have. And the third one is, as I read the ordinance or the draft ordinance, it seemed to indicate that by approving this in ag, we would also be approving this change in several other rural zoning areas that have greater impact uses already than ag, and it seems like those should be looked at individually rather than a blanket revision, particularly given my second area of comment about the comp plan coming up. So that's it.
Okay. And commissioners, I just want to, because of the information that came in earlier today and the letter that came out, we have some information we're trying to get answers on, but after Lucas makes his presentation, which he's done with, then it's our position to ask him some questions. But remember that we need to have a public hearing, and we'll discuss the comments, the proposal, citizens' comments, and so on. So I'd like us to keep our questions mostly focused to Lucas for what he can answer for us. And then we'll have a public hearing. Commissioner Van Dalen.
Just based that we've discussed this letter, which I printed when it came at 10 after 4 this afternoon, it seemed rather odd to get a letter that late, just looking at it and going, and then I read through the attachment, printed it, everything that went with it. So I crammed a lot of homework in the last, from 4:10 to leaving for here at 6 o'clock. And it really, and having read through it didn't seem to really affect anything that staff hadn't already worked through on my part, having just speaking to what I read on that. Anyway, I don't know if I'm wording that correctly, but That's what I'm trying to say is it seems to me that we can keep moving on with what we've got.
Okay.
That's just. Yeah.
Any other questions for Lucas? Okay, I want to open the public hearing. And then Becky, go ahead, so that hearing is open.
I remind you that this meeting is being broadcast live. The audio is being recorded and will be posted to the county website. If you would like to provide public comment on this topic, we will take comments from those in the room first. Please come up to the podium and print your full name on the sign-up sheet. If you are participating remotely and would like to speak, virtually raise your hand and we will get to you shortly. If you are using the internet, press the hand icon to raise your hand. If calling in by phone, press *9 to raise your hand. And we'll take speakers from the room. There's a cord there. You might go.
Sign in here. Good evening. My name is Eddie Uri. I'm here with, one thing at a time. I'm the Climate and Energy Policy Manager at Resources, a local Bellingham-based nonprofit with thousands of supporters in Whatcom County, and we work to protect the health of people and ecosystems in this northwest corner of Washington through education, advocacy, and sometimes engaging in processes like these. And some of you remember, from the Planning Commission, remember me being engaged in work on the Cherry Point amendments. For the better part of a decade now, I've played a role in working to protect the public health and safety here from increasing volumes of hazardous materials found, to be transited and transshipped through our area. And this proposal raises some flags, definitely have some concerns around it. And it's certainly an area where just better understanding and having better understanding, more information about the intentions of proponents here who are seeking to expand business in this ag zone. And I believe, am I correct, you purchased property that you're hoping to develop for this use if this code change is allowed?
I
know we can't ask questions during my public comment. Okay, yeah, I just want to flag some things that were not outlined in the planning staff memo that I think should be noted. Recognizing that we have an opportunity here with the Planning Commission to probably work through some things that are going to come up at the County Council, who have the final say on this, and also in advance of problems that may arise should you go forward with seeking conditional use permits and going through a SEPA process. Specifically, so in the Cherry Point amendments, there are specific definitions for fossil fuel transshipment facilities and small fuel storage and distribution facilities. And it seems the described use here is falling in some sort of area that resembles both definitions. And you're using the term reload in a sense that seems to be synonymous with transshipment, but since we have definitions of certain uses in the code that are conditionally allowed in the heavy impact industrial district, what seems to be proposed here based on the limit of 8 or 9 conditions proposed in the draft would be essentially less stringent requirements in the ag district than are required in the industrial zone. And a lot of this comes down to lack of any specificity around volume or scale. Scale and volume really matter when it comes to the health and safety risks. Now that we know that, of course, I'm sure we can be confident proper safety precautions will be taken here, but there have been numerous instances documented by the National Chemical Safety Board of fatal explosions. And so.
Oh, that's your time.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
But I'd love to be able to just, get some back and forth dialogue here and clarify some of those things. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening, Planning Commission. My name is Deanna Traxler. I'm an attorney for the project proponent, Vanderyacht Propane. We're all here to answer questions during our discussion. If you have any for us, if you already have them, we really appreciate your giving us the opportunity to speak and answer the questions. I received a FutureWise letter pretty soon before I got here, so I was able to skim it. I wasn't able to look up the cited case law, but based on the citations included in the letter, it seems very much like those circumstances are distinguishable from those here. The uses that were cited had to do with like recreational facilities, things that take up large swaths of land and actually result in conversion. But we've been really careful here to narrowly tailor the amendment so that it's actually prohibited. So if you read the ordinance really carefully, conversion is outright prohibited. So you have to go through the CUP process. It's a strenuous extra regulatory layer. And if it results in conversion, it won't get approved. And that's the way it's set up. And that is our intention. I wanted to talk about timing really quick too. I was at the county council meeting when they recommended that this move forward, and that question was answered too. What's the urgency about this? And I think it had to do with partly that this is not proposed for anything within the comp plan review process. And also I think the county executive and the deputy county exec supported moving this forward quickly just to kind of get it done since it wasn't going to be part of the regular process. So I just wanted to say, it doesn't appear that there's any support in the FutureWise letter or in the cited case law that what we are proposing is illegal, and it says it is, and it doesn't really make sense with what's stated because of our very narrow parameters and the CUP process that's required. And I want to note, I think there's somebody here from the Ag Advisory Committee, and it sounds like she's here to oppose the amendment, but I just want to make clear that the Ag Advisory Committee voted to recommend approval. So I just want to make sure that her word is not taken as the will of the committee. So we believe that the text amendment speaks for itself. If you read it carefully, you'll see that it prohibits the conversion of ag land so that property that would, or any proposal that would convert would be denied. And we just want to note that you can make a decision tonight. I know that staff is asking for you to slow this down, but I don't think that what you have been provided at the very last minute gives you any reason to do that. And we think that any concerns that have been expressed that are valid in the FutureWise letter have already been addressed by staff. So we would ask that you go ahead and recommend approval and move this forward to the county council. And we thank you very much for your time and your consideration. And I don't know if my client wants to speak. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Go
ahead. Is it time for those who are attending remotely to make a comment?
No.
Okay.
Thank you. I didn't come prepared. Yeah, Denver Vanderyacht, with Vanderyacht Propane here, direct affiliate with this proposal. In regards to this, I just want to be on the record that, I mean, I have the most respect and for the ag land. We have 20 customers who are ag customers between us and Northwest Propane. Over 250,000 gallons are sold within Whatcom County that we directly provide to the ag community. And I like to really focus on the specific. I know we don't like talking specifics, but it would be helpful to know the back end of what specific piece of property that we are looking at. And that is the old EPO grain mill. We are not looking to clear cut or take over any other pre-existing ag land and take it over. That's not our goal. That's not what we want to do. This site was used as a grain offload facility via rail. Looks industrial, light industrial. It is industrial. There is pre-existing ag land there that would still be contracted out to an ag farmer. We're not touching it. We don't want to touch it. We don't want to deal with it. We respect it. We respect all of our neighbors. We want to use this facility as a focal point to reserve gallons to best support the ag community. There's a lot of priorities to that. We understand the need for ag land, and propane is, in regards to climate, is a renewable energy in the Clean Air Act of 1962, and having this facility there would take off a bunch of trucks out of the county and be more localized. So in regards to mileage, fossil fuels being used, it will minimize it tremendously being in this specific location, just right inside of Everson, and having that reserve storage for our egg customers, because they do rely on propane and that renewable energy to fuel water heaters for dairy farmers and crop drying and all that. 52 seconds, but I got nothing else to say. Just wanted to focus on that. So I know I speak quickly. So thank you guys.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Seeing none in the room, we'll go to the virtual. I see one ending in phone number 468. Go ahead. State your name, please.
My name is Ellie Heron. I'm a member of the Agricultural Committee. I voted no on this proposal because I felt like it was could be a can of worms. There is current industrial sites that can accommodate these propane distribution sites, and we were not given the information of where they are in that meeting. So I don't feel like it needs to change an important agricultural code in order to expand a resource that is already available. The term minimal depends on who is asking, and we need to concrete numbers in order to determine the impact of this change. The wording also states that it would limit to sites that have existing structures that could house such a use, of which there aren't many. But what does that mean? What does which there are not many really mean? And under the conditional use permit, it says under certain circumstances, but what are those certain circumstances? The vote from the Agricultural Committee was 3-2. So the members, there was only a small amount of members who actually were there and voted for this code change. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else attending remotely that wishes to speak? Seeing none, is there anyone else in the room wishing to speak? Any other speakers?
Just for a moment, Commissioner Desmani, you had a question?
I can wait until you close the public hearing.
Okay, awesome. I appreciate that. Thank you. Go ahead.
We see no other speakers.
Okay. Because there are no other speakers, we'll close the public hearing. Commissioner Desmani, go ahead.
Yeah, I have some questions about the Ag Advisory Committee meeting. So the first is, what is quorum at the Ag Advisory Committee? I think there's typically 12 or 13 members, right?
Appointed or majority?
Lucas?
Commissioner Define, I'm not sure exactly. I'm not sure it's but they had a quorum. They were able to operate. I believe it's a majority of those appointed, but I'm not certain of that.
So, okay, so like the Planning Commission, the way we work, right? We have 9 members, and so if I think we still have the meeting if there's 5, correct? But it just that for something to be meaningful, a recommendation to be meaningful, then all 5 would have to vote in favor of something. So just thinking about, I don't know if the Ag Advisory Committee works similarly, but it's just important to recognize that we don't know what the number is for quorum. But anyway, I think the Ag Advisory Committee got this item also on their agenda with quite short notice. 5 were able to attend, and 2 were clearly in favor, 2 clearly against, and 1 was kind of on the fence. It seemed to me, based on the reading of the minutes, and voted in favor. So I think it's just important to clarify that to the benefit of my colleagues here. Okay, so well, I have questions about the nature of the amendments. So certainly the intention of the proponent is specific and focused. And I totally got that clear from the participants who have spoken at the hearing and then also in the earlier presentation by staff. And I completely recognize that there's a focused effort on one particular side, which I know I'm familiar with. I'm a county resident. I familiar with rail sidings and rail infrastructure in the county, and that site, it is definitely industrial. What I'm curious about, though, is despite the proponent's very specific targeted interest of to supply a 250,000 gallons. By the way, in the fuel world, that's not a lot of gallons. That's a very small. I mean, I had a tiny business in distributing fuel, and there were months where I distributed 250,000 gallons. So I'm just saying, putting it in context, it's not big. It's not big volume, but it's important to our community. It's important to our farmers to be able to access that product. I completely recognize that. My question is, why are the code amendments that the staff is proposing so broad in nature? They're not targeted to a particular site. And I'm just trying to understand what's the logic of, are there pathways to help a particular proponent who's trying to serve their customers, create energy security for farmers, to be able to pursue something with some very specific guardrails around allowing that project to happen without opening the door for broad sweeping changes to the code? That's a question to staff.
I think our Commissioner Desmani, our intention was to make this a fairly narrow amendment. And that's why there are the 8 conditions that are in there. That was our intention, was to narrow that scope.
And it's just my interpretation. I guess it's time for me to speak my opinion. My opinion is that they are not so narrow. And I get the feeling from reading the letter, there's potential of it not being so narrow. And I think there, perhaps part of the work you can do between this and the next meeting is work on further honing that to be specific. Spend time with the proponent and try to narrow that further so that we're not opening up a can of worms of energy distribution along a rail line that's supposed to be supporting ag.
Point of information too. I did take the time to look up the ag meeting. There are 13 members, but 4 of the positions are not filled. So there were 9 people and on the committee, and 5 were there. But it said it had a quorum, so I assume they had a working quorum.
They had a quorum where they could.
This is a point of information. That's the actual detail. Yeah. So they did have a working quorum.
Any other questions, Commissioner? Comments? Commissioner Masseri?
Yeah, I have a question on why staff is wanting to hold this because of that late letter. I feel like we often get late letters. I don't know that it's a good practice to stall out a process every time we get one unless there's something really specific that we should be considering in that letter. Because when I read it, there was nothing that gave me a lot of pause in it.
It certainly is, the commission can certainly forward the recommendation if they choose. The letter, which is really a public comment, there was just a lot of information in it, and we thought it might be a good idea for us to take a look at it. But if the commission feels differently, that certainly is your option.
Commissioner Van Dalen?
I'll just take this opportunity. I mentioned that I reviewed the letter that we got, on short notice, didn't see anything at all. And we're talking 35 pages on the one attachment. But I'd like to speak to the property itself. I know the property just because I've worked on that property, being in the construction industry, going back, it was like 81 or 82. Built some stuff there, worked on it when it was a feed mill. And then I went and checked it out just recently when I knew this was coming up. And it's an interesting property because like the tool says, it's definitely industrial. But in the layout of it, you have Highway 9 on one side and you've got the railroad on the other side. It's definitely a defined property. But what, showing right where things could be with the railroad spur. But, and this is just being a county resident, is looking, it's been empty for quite a while, and how run down the property was and how it's just been let go. Fences are falling down, graffiti on a lot of, it just doesn't look good. Even though it's not in town graffiti, it's still graffiti. It covered huge walls, and I don't know, it just seemed to me that it needed to be used.
I just have a comment.
Commissioner James, go ahead.
I'm really respectful of staff, I gotta say, and I didn't read it. I did read the whole thing as well. And they have a lawyer that made citations to specific litigation that I think we would be wise to carefully evaluate before we make a decision. The last thing we need to do is move forward and go 2 steps back. And so I'm in favor of taking the counsel of our staff and giving them the time to fully evaluate. And I don't see why we wouldn't do that. And these are not inconsequential claims. Now, they may be good, they may not be good, but I definitely feel that they should be given the opportunity to evaluate. I mean, why, I don't understand why we would not take the advice, and it seems prudent advice to me.
Commissioner Hanson.
Here we go. All right, good. Again, trouble unmuting. Yeah, I tend to agree that there's no rush to put this through, and I still think it should get rolled into the comp plan update. And although there sounds like there's some good arguments for having the propane distribution closer to agricultural uses, one thing I would really like staff to look at in revising this is, although it says the draft ordinance says it would allow this use in the ag zone as a conditional use, it would make it an allowable use with no extra process in light industrial 1, heavy industrial 2, and RIM as a rural industrial. So seems like I'm more concerned about that part than the rest of the ordinance. Seems like they should have to go through the conditional use process as well. If that's what they have now, I don't see why we should be loosening up the requirements.
I have a question too.
Commissioner,
Would it be possible to leave the ag land that is there in ag and just bring the industrialized portion of it out? Is that something that we can do? And we seem more straightforward, since the prohibition against changing zoning is rather specific and rather.
Well, I think that was the part of the intent in the code in item 1 under the uses there. It talks about that you shall not result in the conversion of agricultural lands of long-term commercial significance or land in active agricultural use. That was that item that we were trying to capture in that condition.
and I know,
And if it doesn't, please, I mean,
Well, are you saying then that it is an agricultural use then? Because it's really specific, right, about not converting.
the propane use under this code would not be allowed to convert currently used agricultural land into
But the
Yeah,
agricultural
okay.
land that's there, he said that there's like ag land that they plan on keeping in agriculture, which I think is great, that's wonderful. But could it just not be included in this? Because it seems like we're directly violating that. If we're taking admittedly agricultural land and converting it into non-agricultural land, that seems like that's not what we're supposed to be doing.
I guess maybe I'm not following you. So the land would already, with this provision in place. You
It's a
could,
big piece of land, apparently, part of it's agricultural, they plan on leaving that in agriculture, but we're allowing the zoning, we're adding the rules that govern it to change.
we're allowing for what it would allow for is that portion
A non-agricultural use,
with, exactly,
even though, well,
on the portion that is not agricultural.
but the portion that is non-agriculture, is agricultural, is gonna be converted as well, is that right?
It would not be allowed, under this provision, it would not be allowed. Only the portion that was non-agricultural.
Oh, I thought you said you were gonna rent it out. Oh, okay. You can correct me, I may have misunderstood.
Is that making sense? I'm not sure, I'm not sure.
Well, what I thought I heard was that there's a larger piece of land, and I haven't seen the plat map or anything like that, that some of which was agriculture, they were gonna arrange for that to remain in agriculture as a use, but does that mean that that is not covered by the decisions being made here? That's just a question.
So this provision would not allow them to convert any more of that land that's currently being used as agricultural to come out of that agricultural production.
Right, that's what our current rules say, right?
That's what this proposed rule this one says.
Before we go on, we have some hands up.
Sure.
Perhaps,
Yeah.
Steve Rivera, you can.
Yeah, they're both basically the same because one was worked over a little bit. It's still 20.4. The wording has changed a little bit, but you can look at them both.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we've had the question come up a couple of times. Why is this being brought forward in the way it is?
Initially
Oh,
done, and then they revised it. Just a little bit and changed the wording. So
let's. I'd like to ask, Director Rivera a question, and this has, been asked several times, so I hope we all get the answer to it. My understanding is that Whatcom County has a proposal where anyone can file for a change in the comprehensive plan. Am I correct?
That's correct.
And then that can happen at any time. And then the other thing is we have 10-year plans, and the purpose of a citizen doing that is not that, well, we just changed the 10-year plan and we don't review it again for 10 years, and a citizen comes along and wants to change the comprehensive plan, but we don't tell them we have to wait 10 years for the next time. And I asked that question because that's why this is before us right now. That was my understanding of how the process works.
It's a little bit different in that someone can apply for a code change. In this case, that did not occur. The council voted, a council member brought this forward to the rest of the council.
Okay.
And they put it on the docket. But any citizen can make an application, and that would go to council, and they could choose to put it on the docket. In this case, a council member brought it.
But either way, the intent is, and for someone to make a proposal to change the comprehensive plan, that we have to wait 10 years for the next review. It's that it's meant to be brought forward in a timely manner. And so I just wanted, because it's been asked several times here or alluded to, so I just wanted to bring that up and get us clarified on it. Commissioner Desmani, go ahead.
So yeah, I just want to repeat that the rezones and other language changes in the proposal from the staff could further narrow this proposal to be specific to, and actually potentially streamline a potential redevelopment of this site including making it more eligible for things like economic development funds and other resources that that can be brought to the table. So I just want the staff to look at this from that perspective and think about the concerns about the potential broadness of the current code changes and how it can be further specific to a project that could be quite beneficial to our community. So repeating that point again.
Hey, Commissioner Masseri.
Yeah, I understand why we're talking about the specific project, as it kind of shows an example of what is potentially done with this, but we're not, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, we're not making a code for the specific property. This is gonna be code that could be used if it's applied in a certain area. So it's, to me, it's a little odd that we're getting so fixated on this one property and talking about it. I don't think it'd be right that you'd be trying to affect the code to streamline it to a specific property. I think that, you know, they've got specific regulations in here that are going to limit on what properties can be used for it. And I think that's kind of the appropriate way to talk about it. I mean, that's how I would see we generally talk about these. Am I misunderstanding that?
Yeah, we're turning to you.
No, what we want to avoid is we want to avoid what's called a spot zone. We want to avoid zoning into one particular property. And that's what we want to, this would apply zone wide. So for the entire ag zone.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioner Hanson, go ahead.
I was going to take my hand down when he explained we can't spot zone, but I do also want to, might as well just again reiterate that this an ordinance covers 3 other zones as well. So, and it makes it easier in those 3 other zones, and that's another reason the staff should be looking at it. And we should look at it carefully.
Go back. Right,
We have, it appears we have a panelist or 2 with hands up. And in this part of the,
doesn't show the train.
in this part of the meeting, unless they're called on by,
I don't think so.
Unless it is. In this part of the meeting, unless you're called on by commission member, we're not able to have you speak. But if a commission member calls you, you may. Commissioner Desmani, go ahead.
Yeah, to address the point, I understand the point. Spot zoning is not good public planning process. I understand that, but certainly it'd be fair to say that when there is an existing code practice as it relates to ag land and the other categories that Commissioner Hanson spoke to, we are certainly looking at an exception. So when an exception is made, is it better to make an exception broad and perhaps violate the original intent of the prior code? Or is it better to do it specifically? So a point in case is Cherry Point. You know, it's fair to say that what's happening as far as refineries in Cherry Point is a spot zone. The Cherry Point industrial area is a kind of a narrowly defined zoning associated with a part of our county that we want to be heavy industrial. And one of the things I'm curious about is, you know, there's certainly some can make a case for the need for additional industrial friendly space in our county. And I certainly have been on the other side of that in the private sector, seeing the need for more industrial space in our county. Because frankly, Cherry Point's controlled by the big boys. And I remember when I had my little business and I went to the PUD and I asked for water and they laughed at me. You know, I was a little guy. Nobody cared about little guys doing projects out at Cherry Point. I remember that like it's yesterday, even though it was over a decade ago. And what I'm trying to get at is that I think that it's there are many important issues here. I don't want to suggest that this problem is just about one business, but the county needs to think about how it's supporting industry and how and the benefits of industry and manufacturing and things like that. And you know, a piece that the planning commission, when I first joined the planning commission, talked quite a bit about is that we're still very much using propane and other fossil fuel, but I also want the staff to consider what kind of things can we do to think about how we're also creating opportunity for renewable fuels as part of this investigation too. So, and I've got specific thoughts about that, but that would be inappropriate. So anyway, I just want to say that that you know, there is a concern about spot zoning, but we are in unique territory here when we talk about energy and industry. Thank you.
I have a
Commissioner Van Dalen.
Just a confirmation question for staff mainly, Steve. So on section 2 of our proposed amendment, on October 10th, the county council approved resolution AB 2023-668, amending resolution 2023-005 to docket a code amendment 2. And then it says what the amendment is. So this is page 1 of 6, if everybody's looking. Amend Whatcom County Code 20.40.150 Agricultural Ag District to allow propane reload, storage, and distribution facilities in the ag zone as a conditional use under certain circumstances. So if they approve this, my question to staff is, what is our part in this again, just to kind of clarify things a little bit? If that's been approved by the county council already on October 10th, what are we working on now at this point, just to kind of simplify it?
So what they approved was the docket. And the docket is that list of things that to work off of, right? Most of the things come to the planning commission. There are a few exceptions. But most of those things come to the planning commission. And so what they did is they basically said, this is something that we want to have looked at.
Okay.
And so that's what we're doing.
Okay.
If there are not further questions or comments, the staff has asked us to delay this to the next meeting. And if the commission desires to do that, a motion to that effect would be in order.
I'd move that we delay it to the next meeting.
Commissioner, James, can you speak just a little louder for us to make sure it goes on the recording?
I move we delay it to the next meeting, accepting the staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. There's discussion, Commissioner Masseri.
Yeah, as I said earlier, I'm not really in favor of that. I think we get a lot of these kind of letters last minute. They often have legal sightings. There's gonna be time between if we move this on before the council would vote on it. I think staff could address any concerns in that time. There may not be any. When I read it, it didn't seem like even if those sightings were accurate, that they really were fully applicable. So I just think that we're kind of letting this late letter slow down a process that doesn't need to be slowed down. So I'll be voting against it to move it, I'll be moving against holding it.
Commissioner Hanson.
Well, I would be voting against the proposal if it doesn't have further work from staff. But in terms of this motion, I would wonder if the person who made the motion and the seconder would change next meeting to return something to the effect of return to staff for further work, because we don't need to tell staff which particular meeting they should bring it back to us at. Or say for a future meeting instead of next meeting.
Okay, we have a,
Kelly, if I may, I just want to point out our next scheduled meeting is 2 weeks from tonight. So that means we would have to have a packet going out like Tuesday of next week. It's unlikely we could get much done.
That's a friendly amendment to my motion. I would accept that.
Me too.
When the staff's able to bring it.
We could simply hit that second meeting in February, but I can't, it'd be pretty hard for us to meet that.
The legal notice would have had to been sent out tomorrow.
Yeah.
To the Herald.
Yeah, I apologize. That's a friendly amendment that makes it better.
Commissioner Desmond,
No, I was just saying, yeah, I'm fine with that too.
Commissioner Van Dalen.
I agree with Dominic. I took the time, skipped dinner to read through the letters like I mentioned before. And it really didn't apply to from what I read, and staff is, I know because of that letter coming, we're looking at the delay, but I would vote against it as well, just because to me, it just seemed like a last minute delay tactic of some type.
So, let's deal with the motion here for just a second, and both the maker of the motion, Commissioner James, and Commissioner Desmond, who seconded it, have both agreed to change it to be a future meeting. And so I'll accept their agreement to change on the motion. Commissioner Desmond.
I just want to be clear is that I want to be clear that one of the commissioners suggested that it's because of the memo. I think that I spoke for myself and my desire to let staff review both the comments that were made in this meeting and the memo, and also reconsider on how to make it more specific, working with the appropriate industry that is pushing for this. So it's not specifically about the memo from FutureWise. It's a broader desire to see it be more focused. And I think it's been clear that there's many ways where it could be more focused, and I'd like to see staff choose to do that. So that's, and similarly, I would vote against the proposal if staff doesn't do that. So if it doesn't change. That's just wanted to clarify.
More discussion? Becky, would you call the roll, please?
The motion is to delay the decision to the next meeting determined by staff, future meeting, okay. Deshmani,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
James,
Yes.
Mosseri,
No.
Van Dalen,
No.
Dahlquist,
No.
and Barton.
No.
That passes 4-3, doesn't need a quorum.
Fails.
I think
It fails, oh, I'm sorry, it failed.
Commissioner Hanson.
Since we're going on now to consider passing, we're probably going on to consider passing the draft amendments up to council, but I note that no one has made a motion to do so. And also, if someone does make a motion to do so, I would like to call on Mr. Uri to complete his comments.
We don't have a motion. He said if there's a, what he asked is if there was a motion that he'd like to call on Eddie Uri to continue his comments. Commissioner Masseri?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we recommend approval and pass this on to the county council with the draft ordinance and the findings and facts. I would second that.
We have a motion and a second to pass this on to the council. Are there any discussion? Okay. Becky would see no, wait, is that, oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Commissioner
No,
Michael,
no,
make your statement.
Go ahead, Commissioner Hanson, sorry.
well, I'm confused about where Mr. Uri went. Did he leave the meeting?
He's here. Didn't, was it you or was it Commissioner Desmani wanted to call on, Mr. Uri?
It was me.
Okay. So,
Should I come up there?
Go ahead.
From here again? Okay, so Commissioner Masseri stated, this isn't just about one project. We're not spot zoning, we're amending code for the entire agricultural district. And what we're using here are very vague, undefined terms with no boundaries. Where I think by passing this now, that's just passing the buck on to county council and making it someone else's problem. I understand you can move on to other docket items. But there's an opportunity here, I think, to do better service to opponents and those whose interest is to have expanded propane distribution or whatever arguments there may be for this. We need to service not to take a closer look, and I would recommend taking some time to work out what might be the more appropriate conditions. So let's look at what this project or what the impetus for this, right, is a project, even though it would go beyond that. We're talking about building a rail transshipment terminal to unload, to bring in trains, probably multi-freight, I would imagine, but to pull propane cars off of trains and reload them onto trucks on a rail line that runs from Sumas to Burlington. Now, trains already come through Bellingham on their way to Cherry Point to do the same thing, where Petrogas loads propane for export to Asia, but also, I believe, loads trucks for distribution to, I think, perhaps even your company or local competitors. And as you said, you also are able to get it direct from refineries. There's transshipment that happens there. We're talking about taking a use that's longstanding existing in the industrial zone and expanding out to the ag zone. And granted, there's some limitations on where this might be. Granted, there must be pre-existing buildings. Maybe there's a few other sites that are on such a rail line, but you haven't actually in this code defined what reload means. And it seems to be implied that the sought after use is train to truck transshipment. I think we need to there's some like particular things that need to be worked out here, or I can imagine this ordinance is going to run into trouble with county council, and you're going to run into trouble in a conditional use permit process.
Thank you, Eddie. Okay, any other comments? Questions? Becky, would you call the roll, please?
Hanson. Hanson.
Sorry, I got lost again on the computer. No.
James.
I will abstain if I wasn't here for the discussion.
Masseri.
Yes.
Van Dalen.
Yes.
Dahlquist.
Yes.
Deshmani.
No.
Barton.
Yes.
Fails 4-1.
Passes.
It passes. It passes. 4 ayes. You have to have 5.
4-2. 4-2.
That's a good quorum. Sorry.
Are we, okay, on the comp plan?
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, so, the rule on the compound plan change is you need a majority of the members of the 9 members. So we are, 4 ayes, 2 nays, and an abstain.
Fail, right?
The motion failed. Mhm.
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
Commissioners, what would you like to do? Is there any more,
So I'd like to make a suggestion is that given the fact that there weren't the votes to pass it, I'd like to reintroduce the motion by Commissioner James to push it back to a February meeting for reconsideration after staff does some work. I think it was a I love all my colleagues on the planning commission, but I think it was a mistake to rush too quickly into approval. And of course, now we don't have the votes. I'm certainly open to reconsidering my vote, but I want staff to do some work first.
we have a motion, do we have a second?
I will second.
Yes, we have a motion and a second for, to reconsider for staff to, do some additional work and bring it back to a February meeting. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, Becky, will you call the roll, please?
James,
I'll still abstain.
I'm sorry, let's hold just a moment. Commissioner Hanson, I saw your hand come up there.
Yeah, I just think it's a moot point. I think by not advancing it, staff will work on it and bring it back to us. So I just think it's a moot point.
Becky, go ahead and call the roll, please.
James abstained. Mosseri,
Yes.
Point of order. So sorry. Sorry, before we vote. Point of order on that. Can staff bring it back to us, Chair, if we voted it down?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Well, then, yeah, I'm not sure I get the point then.
Please
Sorry.
continue what's going on, but
the motion was to move this to a later date.
to bring it, yeah, the motion was to, reconsideration for staff to work on it and bring it back at a meeting in February.
Okay. James abstained. Mosseri was
Yeah.
aye.
Yes.
Van Dalen,
No.
Dahlquist,
Yes.
Fishmani,
Yes.
Hanson,
Abstain.
Barton.
Yeah,
That passed. You don't need a quorum for that.
no. Well, it'll be brought back at the February meeting. No, there's nothing more on the agenda. Does anyone else have any new business, additional business?
So can I just ask the commission's pleasure?
Yeah.
We can do one or two things. So we have a regular business meeting scheduled for your next meeting, which is in a couple of weeks. And we'll have this item, which we would usually bring back that second meeting, which is the 25th, 22nd, something along those lines. And we can either hold both of them, or we can push your annual business meeting and do them all at the same meeting. I'll leave that to you guys, just looking for something.
Okay.
What's your pleasure?
Can you be ready by the business meeting? The next meeting?
With this? No. So we can hold a business meeting, and then we can come back with this on the second.
The business meeting should be the first
meeting of February.
Yep, we can hold it either, but we could, I'm saying we could combine that into, and do it all in the second meeting, or we can split it. I'll give that to your option.
Commissioner Masseri.
I'd prefer to keep them separate and get the business meeting out of the way when we usually do it, and I think that, you know, the next one could also be a contentious, long meeting when we talk about this, so I think it'd be nice to have the business meeting already done.
Commissioner Hanson.
If there's more discussion on this point, I will hold what I have to say because it was a report of activity that I wasn't able to make because I couldn't get it in the meeting when I had the opportunity.
And my position on the first meeting in February is that it's always our business meeting, and that should not change. Anything else? Commissioner Hanson, your hand is still up. Do you have more?
Yeah, I just wanted to report that I had contact with the executive twice and with all of the school district superintendents, advising them of the availability of school impact fees as per the 2007 ordinance that hasn't been implemented. So to my understanding, several of these school districts should be seeking to enter into an interlocal agreement with the county. And so I was acting as a citizen to inform them of this information they didn't know, and it was well received.
Thank you, Commissioner Hanson. Seeing as there is no additional business, then the meeting is adjourned.